Hi, this is Izzuddin Ismail from the RunCloud show, where we talk to PHP programmers from around the world and see what they've been doing with PHP. And on this episode, we have here with us quite a legend in the PHP community, I would say, Ben Edmunds. Hello, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right. Okay. First of all, thank you for doing this. Thank you for being on the show with me. And I think we're going to cover quite some interesting things when it comes to PHP, and people can also get to know the person behind the name and the stuff that you do, and maybe a bit of your motivation when it comes to programming and IT stuff, and maybe also some stuff not related to PHP and programming. So
that's cool.
some stuff I've been doing in the past few episodes is where I asked the PHP programmers, my guest, about the things that they use when it comes to work. So first question is about your machine. Is it a PC or is it a laptop?
Okay, so right now I'm on a Mac Mini. And, I have this set up with, I got two of the curved Samsung 27-inch monitors on my desk. So, and I've got like a really tiny IKEA desk, so the monitors are bigger than the desk actually. And then I use, like when I travel, I use a MacBook Air 13-inch.
All right, but mostly you work on your desktop, on the Mac Mini.
Yeah,
all right.
Mostly.
Dual monitor, that's a nice setup.
Yeah, I've been pretty happy with it. I just got it this year, and I love it. So, especially the curved. The curved's kind of interesting because it changes the perspective a little bit. You can put things on the edges of the screens, and they still feel like they're in your field of vision instead of slightly off like flat screens do.
Okay, how about your phone? What do you use? Your mobile phone?
iPhone still, iPhone 7. So I'm definitely Mac all the way.
Oh, right. Apple stuff.
Yeah.
And then when you do programming, right? So what text editor, what software do you use?
So I use Sublime Text,
Sublime
and then
Text.
iTerm for terminal.
All right.
And yeah, I guess mostly just a combination of those two.
And when it comes to Git and Git hosting, where do you host? Especially your personal stuff. GitHub.
Yeah, GitHub.
All right.
Yeah, and then for like server hosting, I use DigitalOcean for my personal stuff.
And you see, PHP RunCloud is a server management. It's a web panel for your servers in the cloud, like DigitalOcean, and Vultr and whatnot. It's something that we ask our guests. How do you deploy your codes on the cloud servers?
So for most of my personal stuff, I just have Git hooks in place. And so it's a pretty basic, it just pulls down the Git repo updates to the server. Nothing fancy going on for my personal stuff for the most part.
Okay. How did you get the server set up? You do that by hand manually?
So with my DigitalOcean stuff, mostly all by hand. They do have a couple like one-click services that I've started to use. For development, I do play around with Docker, but I've had pretty bad luck with Docker on Mac lately.
Oh, okay.
Because they've been doing a lot of updates to it, and just the Mac client's not super stable. So that's been a bit frustrating. So I've actually kind of slowed down my Docker use, and I'm mostly doing everything by hand again for right now.
All right. Okay, good enough. Okay, so let's get into in the way early beginning about how you got started with PHP. So maybe you can tell us about what you were doing before you discovered PHP and how you got into it.
Yeah, so I actually got into it really young. I made my first website when I was, I want to say like 11 years old, and it was for my dad's company. He was a real estate agent.
11?
Yeah, and so I made that with like HTML, and I don't even think I used CSS. I want to say it was just like straight HTML, and that was kind of sparked that fire of wanting to learn more. And then I went on to learn Perl. That was like my first web language was Perl and CGI. And then C and stuff like that. And then I got involved with PHP. Actually, at my second job, I was working at a factory doing their IT and robotics, and they had a lot of SCADA systems. And so SCADA is where you like pull data from the robots and you want to display it in the plant, or you want to report on it, things like that. And we were using C# and Python for most of that, but then we needed a web interface for it. And so I started learning PHP for that web interface, and then I just kind of fell in love with it from there.
Wait, so when you started using PHP, it's the time when there's already C sharp.
Yeah. So I started PHP 4. I don't remember the exact version, but it was PHP 4. It was I want to say about 10 years ago. It was when I was around 18.
Oh, all
18,
right.
19,
And
something like
okay,
that.
so when that was already your second job?
Yeah, well, I was homeschooled actually. So I started working when I was
Ah,
15, and then my second job was when I was 18. So,
oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay, so you got a job kind of like really early, not like the normal how all people go to college or whatnot. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that's cool as well. I mean, you get early exposure, you get real work experience and stuff. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it was cool. I was able to do school in the morning because it was homeschool, and then in the afternoons I would go work. Basically, like 15 to 18, I did that until I graduated high school, and then I went to college. I was all self-taught. Yeah, so it's been a pretty good career path for me. It's definitely a lot of hard work up front, but it was worth it.
So that first PHP thing that you did, what was it?
So we built a web interface to display data from the plant. So we would show. So it was a robotic plant for building Mercedes and BMW cars. And so we would have a web interface with dashboards, like on big TVs, and then also like a portal you could go to. And it would show management information about the plant. So they would see like this robot's currently down or all the robots are up. They would see what the production numbers are for the day. So like how many cars have they built today? How many parts have they put through various production lines? Things like that. So it was just a web interface and dashboarding to the plant's data.
Mm, all right. And from there, where did you go? Because
Yeah, so go ahead.
no, I was about to say. I mean, reading about you and trying to find things about you before I did this interview, doing a bit of research. You've done a lot for PHP, like from CodeNightly stuff, and then now onto Laravel, and now I see that you're also writing about Node.js or not.
Mhm.
So, how I just want to understand how you got to that from your first job and then going into it and then started writing about PHP and other stuff.
Yeah, so there I started using PHP and I just really kind of fell in love with it. It was the worst PHP in the world too. It's the kind of PHP we all hate. So it was, SQL statements inside views. Like there really was no idea of separation, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
just reading shit on Stack Overflow and copy and pasting and figuring out as I went along because it was self-taught. So it was really horrible. Again, like SQL inside the views and stop the line, stop some HTML, go do a query, start the HTML again. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But from there, I really loved it. But that job wasn't fully centered around programming. It was programming, IT support, robotics programming. It wasn't like just web or just PHP. And I decided I really wanted to focus on web programming and expand in that way. So I found a job in Jacksonville, Florida. So it was, a state away. I grew up in Alabama. And that was for an ad company. They were a marketing agency, is what they were. And so that was actually just as a full-time PHP programmer. And there's when I really got to delve in and get really deep in PHP. I also had a lot of time to try things out because a lot of the sites we did were they were very small sites.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gave me flexibility, though, if I wanted to try something new for a new site, I could. And there wasn't a big risk to it, because if you're doing a site that's going to be up in the next 2 to 4 weeks, if it's a little late or if it's a bad architecture decision, if you don't like the framework you try, it's not a big deal to rewrite it, basically. So it gave me a good chance to really try a lot in PHP and to expand my knowledge there. And that's when I got started in Codeigniter. And I just
Mm-hmm.
really fell in love with Codeigniter. And I did it at work and then I did it at home and I just loved it.
So what's interesting that you built? Kind of like, what was the first thing that you
Mhm.
built with CodeNightly?
That is a very good question. And truthfully, I don't remember if I know the answer. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, but
So
you also built quite a number of stuff for CodeNightly when it comes to
yeah.
libraries and can you share a little bit some things that you built for CodeNightly?
Yeah, so I think the first open source project I did for Codeigniter, or that I worked on, was Pyro CMS. And
Power
so it was,
CMS.
yeah, and so Pyro is actually, now that I think about it, Ionic CMS was the name of that. That was the first open source Codeigniter project. And then I went from working on that CMS to working on Pyro CMS, which was a competitor at the time. And Pyro is
Pyro
now a
CMS. All right.
Laravel. Yeah, it's now a Laravel-based framework. But back then it was on Codeigniter.
Mm-hmm.
And it was ran by Phil Sturgeon, who's a good friend of mine. And that's actually how we met working on that together.
Mm-hmm.
From there, if I remember the chain of events correctly, Pyro needed an authentication system. And then also a lot of the projects I did personally and for work needed auth. And there really just wasn't a great solution for that in Codeigniter. There was Takeoff and a couple other kind of thrown together solutions, but there wasn't anything that I really felt met my needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started on Ion Auth. I found Redux Auth, which was an abandoned Codeigniter project, which is a really basic auth for Codeigniter. And then I just built on top of that. I forked it. I got in touch with the creator to see, does he want me to still use the name? Does he want to make a new name? Stuff like that. And he was off, I think, doing Kohana. He really just didn't want any part of it. He said, rename it, take it, make it your own, it's yours. And so then it just evolved from there into Ion Auth, which I still support to this day. It's still a pretty popular auth library for Codeigniter.
Yeah, but so is Ion Auth right now, is it exclusively for CodeNightly, or is it more kind of like an open type where you can use it with any framework or libraries?
Yeah, so it's actually just Codeigniter. I have made some efforts to make it more generic many times, and I always it ends up not quite being worth the work to put in, because there are very good options for generic libraries for that in PHP now.
Mm-hmm.
So I mostly consider Ion Auth as either Codeigniter specific or maybe even a bit of legacy support at this point. I probably wouldn't choose Ion Auth for a new project.
Yeah, I think if the way I see Ion Auth and CodeNightly, I think that's what the CodeNightly community mostly use these days when it comes to authentication, login, log out, those kind of stuff. In most projects, I see they use Ion Auth. So I think Ion Auth and what you did for CodeNightly and Ion Auth is really a big contribution to the CodeNightly programmers.
Yeah, and I really just kind of fell into it. It was just something I needed, and I wrote it at the right time, and it got popular. So, I told a lot of people, and they seemed really impressed by it, and I try to be like, anybody can do it. I didn't do anything special. I really didn't even work all that hard to make it a success. I just kind of fell into something that was just really needed at the time. And it's been very successful. And it still kind of just keeps going off its own steam. I'm really not trying to add features at this point. Mm-hmm. It's been stable for years. And that's part of, I guess that is a feature of it, right? Is that it's not going to change. Backwards compatibility is a very big deal.
Okay, how about let's talk about your writing. So you're not just programming stuff. So you have also written books about PHP and programming. So
that kind of evolved from that, I guess. I've written 2 books on securing PHP apps and securing Node apps. Mm-hmm. They're basically the same book. They're the same content, but with different examples and with a little different kind of perspective based on certain needs. So the idea I had was I had all this experience from doing Ion Auth, from the freelancing I've done, from the jobs I've had, right, on security over the years. But it's still something I see really not taken seriously by a lot of programmers. They wait until they have an issue, until they get hacked, or until something doesn't work right to really take it seriously. And so I wanted to just raise awareness of it. And I also wanted to give kind of newer programmers a good way to learn it in a small dose. Because if you're a junior programmer, it's really hard to just sit down and Google, how do I learn to secure an app? Because there's so many different things you have to know to secure from. And it's not just, a one-stop solution. There's lots of the tech vectors. So I wanted to make just a quick work guide for a junior to mid-level programmer to kind of jumpstart their learning so they didn't have to spend a decade to know the basics of security. And for most web apps, it's the same, no matter the language. So my idea was to just do like a generic workbook and then do specific versions for different languages. And the languages I chose were PHP and JavaScript because those are the two I know the best right now.
So, okay, one book is for PHP and the other one is for Node.js.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so coming from a PHP background, and of course, even though Node.js is mainly JavaScript, but it is more for back-end and whatnot, right? So when did Node.js started for you?
Yeah, so I was doing PHP, and then just over the years, I ended up doing a lot of front-end because, hey, we need a website, and a lot of that website ends up being front-end work. So I learned JavaScript over, I can't really pinpoint when it started, right? It's just some project somewhere added JavaScript, and I learned it, and then it went from there. And I've done a lot of JavaScript, a lot of front-end JavaScript over the years, probably as much as I've done PHP. And then really from that, it was just kind of like, hey, I'd mostly done JavaScript for the past 3 months. I have a new project. Let me just do the backend in JavaScript too, using this Node thing, so it sounds cool. And eventually I had a lot of projects that didn't have any PHP at all. It was JavaScript front-end and backend. And now I would say I have a more nuanced view now that I've done both for a while, and I try to fit it to what each technology is best for. Mm-hmm. So, Node I definitely prefer for either kind of small utility applications or utility services that need to be called, or anything that's socket or real-time or where async really gives you an advantage into what you need to get done. But I still use PHP daily and really love it for kind of any type of larger app for the most part. I feel like it's easier to structure, but a lot of that comes down to preference. They're both tools that can accomplish the same job. Too.
Okay, yeah, I was about to ask that question though about what's the difference when it comes to developing on Node.js and what's the difference when developing on PHP. So I guess to some extent you answered that, but which would be easier to get started with and to kickstart a project? Which would be easier?
So a lot of it really depends on your team. So if your team already has PHP experience, unless you're doing something real time or with sockets, I'd recommend you just stick with what you know, unless you have a really good use case for learning something new. The bigger problem I've seen with people trying to adopt Node is just the operations of the server sysadmin uses, because it is something new to support on your servers. It's a whole new technology to learn, to keep maintained, things like that. And so it's not just a development issue, but it's also a server admin issue.
Right.
And if you don't have your processes running well, Node processes die easily. And as a PHP developer, you're not used to a PHP process dying because Apache or Nginx handles that for you. So you have to know how to settle it up very differently. On the other hand, if you were a new programmer starting out, you know nothing at all, I'd probably recommend you start with JavaScript because it's just ubiquitous. It runs on every platform, every environment ever. You can do front end and back end. And so if you're going to set aside the next year to learn something, I'd definitely recommend learning JavaScript because it's just versatile.
Yeah, I do feel like it is getting more and more versatile. Like I said, you can do a lot of things with JavaScript, the front end, the back end, mobile, desktop. And I think I read somewhere that certain circuit boards are also supporting JavaScript. So you can also do hardware now.
Doesn't surprise me.
Right, so I think I should really ask you this in the earlier when we started this off. What is it that you do now on a daily basis? Do you work for a company or do you freelance full-time or do you run your own business?
So I'm a CTO at Mindfulware. I'm not a founder, but I was a fairly early stage employee. And we do insurance and healthcare technology software. So it'll be white labeled portals for insurance carriers or EMRs for mental health hospitals.
Let me try to get that again. So you're a CTO at an insurance company.
So we're a tech company. We're not an insurance company, but we sell software and do consultancy work for insurance and healthcare companies. That's our niche.
All right. So you're a CTO there.
Yeah, and so my day changes every day. My job really is just to put out the fires, right? So whatever's needed that day, I do. a lot of the days on phone calls with clients or people internally in the company, solving problems, whatever those problems may be. And then a lot of the days spent also on Slack, coordinating things, answering questions, rubber ducking. As far as programming, I don't get the chance to do too many like large scale features anymore, just because I don't have the focus. I'm the one that gets called if something catches on fire. So it's rare for me to get a 4-hour block with no interruptions.
Mm-hmm.
So what I try to do is I try to just bug fix. So what other issues come up in the software, what other another engineer doesn't have time to do, I'll try to take on those smaller features or bugs that I can handle in under an hour usually. And that's a lot of my day. So a lot of my day will be like phone calls, coordinating, and then with some bugs thrown in between them.
How big is this company? Like the engineers number of programmers that you have?
Yeah, so we don't usually like freely share that because we upscale and downscale based on clients. We have NDAs and things like that. I will say it's a smaller scale company. We are remote. So I'm actually the only one here in New York. And then we have people throughout the States.
All right. So the setup is kind of like a remote working setup. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Cool.
Yeah, so I'm actually at home right now. Yeah.
It's cool that almost all, if not, maybe all that I've been speaking with on the show works remotely. I didn't really plan for that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I guess sometimes I just want to know about how remote working works. It's not something common in my country, in Malaysia. It's something very uncommon, and some people don't really believe in it. But I'd like to know more about how remote working is being done. How do you get productive? How do you manage your team members in different time zones and stuff like that?
Okay. There's a lot of facets to that, right? So most of the day is spent on Slack for most of their team, which really is kind of the godsend for this kind of environment. You have to change your expectations to be more asynchronous. So if I ask a question or if I need help with something, for the most part, I'm not asking someone to do it right away. And when it's on Slack, I'm asking them to do it when they get a chance. Real-time conversations do happen there, but you have to kind of switch that from like, I'm walking up to you in person and asking you something, and it's back and forth real time, to just, it's asynchronous. It's going to happen when it happens. And it has a lot of pluses and minuses. So if it's something time critical, that of course is a big minus. But if it's something that should be thought out over time, or something where you need the help of the coworker that's in another time zone, that kind of works perfectly for that. I would say it's a challenge and a benefit. The main benefit you get from remote working is just the focus. So you don't have those distractions at the office. You don't have someone, bumping by your desk and asking you questions. All those distractions you're used to. You can really set up your environment the way you're most productive, the way you prefer. Set up your hours and your day the way you're most productive, and just dig into problems and program for 8 hours if you want to, whatever works for you. But then it does have downsides, especially as like a manager, or if you're trying to do design or architecture, trying to think up ideas or collaborate on higher level items is more difficult. That really is a lot easier in person. Whiteboards over papers back and forth, trying to draw out or design something large is difficult remotely, but it's definitely doable. You just have that trade-off, more developer productivity and less design productivity. And when I say design, I don't mean like designers, I mean architecture or high-level planning.
All right, so in your case, is everybody in the United States, or are there people from outside?
Yes, everybody's in the States. We have hired someone in Canada once, but it was just because the company's based in the States, we had so many like legal loopholes to jump through and accounting issues, and just ended up being like a nightmare on a process side because we are a smaller company and we just weren't geared up for that. But we have people over the States, I think in all time zones in the States, or at least 3 of the time zones in the States. And so it's a pretty good system.
Oh, all right, interesting. Okay, I need to fix a bit on my lamp.
Yeah, right.
I got a bit of problem with my lighting.
No worries. I can keep talking while you do that. So the other thing I do, and the other benefit we offer our employees that comes in really handy is Coworking Spaces, because sometimes it can get you get stir crazy. You just get lonely or just tired of being in the same place, just by yourself all day, or like in my case, I have a dog as a coworker in person. It's not great company.
That's nice.
Yeah, so I rent a co-working space that's about a 15-minute walk from my house, and it's just, I have the dedicated desk there with a monitor and a setup, and I just go in when I feel like it. And we offer that as a perk to our employees as well. And some of them use it, some of them like it, some of them don't, and it's really just about figuring out what works best for you. For me, I have it, but I might only use it, 2 days out of the week. I might not use it at all that week. It really just kind of depends on if I feel like I'm stuck on something that I shouldn't be, then I'll try to get a change of scenery. And just having somewhere else to go does seem to help that.
All right. Okay, I want to go back into your book that you wrote, right? Well, you see, most of the time, people in the tech world, most programmers that I see, that I found, they find it difficult to write. I mean, of course, you can write codes, you can be on Facebook and write status updates and whatnot. If you accumulate all that, that becomes a book or what. But still, to sit down and organize your thought into chapters, into what you're going to write, that is a very, what's the word? Very troublesome, very hard for many. Yeah. So how do you go about writing a book?
Yeah,
In
I
your
definitely
case.
wouldn't say it was an easy process for me either. I don't consider myself a great writer. I feel myself, I think I'm fine at it. I don't think it's horrible, but it's definitely not my strong suit. So it was definitely like a labor of love, and it's nowhere near like paid for itself in the hours I put in. So don't write a book thinking it's going to be profitable, because you can freelance and definitely make
Right.
more money. But it was it's something I'm very proud of. So it was worth it in the end. But yeah, it was difficult. It was a lot of nights, a lot of thrown away chapters that just didn't turn out how I wanted them to. For me, the hardest part was kind of finding that voice, because I wanted the book to have a certain feel to it where it was more like we're having a conversation at a bar. I didn't want it to be boring and technical like a lot of books.
Right.
I wanted to be really laid back and still professional, but not super serious. I wanted to be more like, hey, we're talking about this issue you have with your app, and here's how I would fix it, kind of thing. So finding that voice was difficult, but once I did, it gained a momentum, right? So after the first couple of chapters, the rest came a lot easier.
All right. So, okay. How long did it actually took to write that book, your first book?
So the first one, I want to say, was about 6 months, and it wasn't like dedicated effort. It was just, as I felt the motivation, at night to do it. So dedicated effort, I would probably say maybe 100 hours actually typing,
Uh-huh.
but a lot of that's hard to quantify. It's not like you could do it in 2 weeks if you had 100 hours to kill.
Right.
A lot of it, you have to really put time and thought behind it. And then the editing process, the publishing process, all of those are whole separate things you have to learn and get used to, and they take time.
So this is securing PHP web application. So where can people find this?
So securing PHP apps is available through Apress, and there's both a printed version and there's an ebook version. And
Apress. All right.
Apress, the publisher.
Uh-huh.
And I can send you the URL. It's building secure PHP apps. Actually, I got the new address. So securingphpapps.com
All right.
is the new address for it. Let me throw that in here so you can put it in the notes.
All right. Securingphpapps.com. Okay, got it.
Cool.
All right. How about we talk about something else, not PHP related, not programming related?
Okay, cool.
So, about Ben Edmunds, what else do you do apart from programming, apart from work?
Yeah, so I would say my hobby, which it's work for some people right now, is day trading. And it's
Oh wow.
just something I had like a colleague that kind of introduced me to it about a year and a half ago, and I just love it. Just
really?
reading up on financial markets and economics, and just kind of nerding out on all that. And then I trade some too as well, based on all that.
It's interesting that you say that you started to do day trading and whatnot, because I thought like when at work you do programming, programming can get stressful at times, and then you go and do day trading, which I
So,
thought is
like,
gonna
what's more
double the
stressful than
stress.
programming? Yeah, I'm not very good at relaxing. That's what my girlfriend says to me. So,
How has it been? You're
uh,
making profit, you're losing money.
yeah, I would say I'm about break even at this point. So, some days I make money, some days I lose money, which, from what I've read, is a big milestone actually. So I'm no longer just like burning money. I'm now kind of staying steady.
All
A
right.
lot of this is just the mental challenge. Programming is a certain type of mental challenge,
Hmm.
but this is a whole different one. So it's
Yeah.
challenging, it's rewarding, but it's just so different than what I've done my whole life that it's intriguing and interesting to me. It's not something you can. It's not like just a problem you can solve. It's not like logic based.
Right.
It's so many multifacets to it, and there's intuition involved, and it's
Emotions.
different. I enjoy it. What's that?
Yeah, I thought, um, the way I think about it is that a lot of emotions go through whether you're gonna buy or you're gonna sell, whether it's gonna work or not. Right?
One of the
Yeah.
hardest things too was like you might know that over time the stats say you're gonna make money, but if you're down several $100s, it's really hard to like take that next trade. It's gonna work out over time, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
You learn a lot more about your emotions than you do programming, right? So
Whether you're gonna take that what's the word? Whether you're gonna take that loss or not. Whether you're gonna
yeah,
cut your losses or not. You say, oh, maybe this can still go. Maybe I should
yeah.
not cut the losses yet.
Then you always learn the
Yeah.
hard way, right? You
Yeah.
always let that one go too far, and then you learn the hard way.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so one thing you mentioned just now, you have a dog.
Yeah.
So,
So she is a basset hound, 6 years old. Just she's fat and lazy with floppy ears, and she's sleeping on the rug next to me right now. So
oh, well,
yeah.
how long have you had her?
So she was originally my girlfriend's dog. So I've had her for about 2 years now.
Ah, all right.
Yeah.
So, you like the company?
Yeah, she's pretty good company. She's
All right.
so hounds are pretty noisy, right? So she'll have conversations with me if she wants something. Oh,
Okay. This is something else I've asked about. Okay, we're getting back to the programming now.
okay.
This is something else I've asked other programmers, other guests on the show about PHP and how PHP has progressed. From
Mm,
4, 5, 6, no 6, and 7, and also
mm,
especially when it comes to um, when you have the PHP fig,
mm,
and a lot of new things are coming out of that. See, like
mhm,
previously, everything is spaghetti code, and then you have the frameworks, and now you have namespacing, auto loading, PSRs. Um, some would see it. It's kind of like a steeper learning curve for new
mm,
programmers.
mhm.
But of course, a lot more. I see that more of the senior programmers, they say like this is a good thing because a lot of the problems are already being solved. You can just find it on Composer and packages and whatnot. So, what's your general opinion on all this?
Yeah, so it has changed a ton. So like when I first started, it was PHP was really just about getting something done quickly, and no
Uh
one
huh.
cared about architecture
Right.
or even clean code or dry or any of that. It was just let's get it working, whatever, just make it work. There was no testing. I don't even remember if there was a way to unit test in PHP back then. I'm sure there was, but
But nobody was
so
doing it.
yeah, nobody was doing it. So it's
I
matured a
spoke
lot.
with Chris Hedges recently.
Mhm.
He can get really grumpy.
I'm sure he's glad we test now, right?
Yeah, he's glad that we test now.
Um, so yeah, it's matured. I enjoyed the progression. I do agree, though. If I were to put myself back in, my shoes 10 years ago, I imagine it would be a lot harder to get started in PHP now, just because there's so much more you have to learn. Instead of learning 2 dozen functions, now you have to learn, object-oriented
Composer.
programming. To get started, you have to learn Composer. There's so many things you have to base core knowledge.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing. So I would say the good thing is that you can still do the quick and dirty way. PHP
Mm-hmm.
still works. Like you can still do a procedural PHP file and make a website, with one index.php file if you want to. So a lot of people hate that you can still do that, but I think it's a big advantage because it means that beginner can get started and get something working in a day without all that knowledge, and then they can slowly expand into the rest of that. That's kind of something I do love about JavaScript and Node as well, is it's geared towards that. You can get something started in a day and then more and more as you go. But yeah, I mean, I think the progression's been great. It's been great to be a part of the PHP community as it's done all those things and to see it grow up as a language. And it felt kind of like in that like PHP 5.1 to 5.3 kind of era. The language itself, the core necessarily didn't want to grow up. They didn't want to mature, and the community just kind of drug them along. They're like, no, we need these things, right? So it's been good. It feels like it's really a community-led project at this point.
All right. So right now, when you code PHP, you still do CodeNightly, or you move on to Laravel, or maybe other frameworks?
Yeah, so it really just depends on the project. I have a lot of Codeigniter apps that I still support. So I do a lot of Codeigniter, but I wouldn't say I would start a new project in Codeigniter right now.
Okay.
New projects are usually Laravel if I'm doing a new PHP project. And then also Slim PHP is it's a micro framework for APIs that I use a lot with PHP. So those are the three main frameworks I use nowadays for PHP. And then I would be remiss not to call out those. So I am on the PHP, the board and the Security Council. And we are working, I say we loosely because I'm not quite that involved unless there's a security issue, but they are working on a version 4 of Codeigniter to bring Codeigniter more up to date with recent standards and Composer and all those things that Codeigniter hasn't really kept up with. So I hope to, hopefully this time next year, I will be able to say I'm using Codeigniter again, but it's still in progress. So.
Yeah, I think I'm also excited to see how CodeNightly 4 is going to be. I've seen a bit of beta. I think there's a lot more better profiling, and there's a better profiling tool. I think Ronald Ezel.
Yeah, Lonnie.
I think is doing good work with CodeNightly 4 and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see how that's going to come out when it's really released.
Yeah, it's exciting to see it progress. Lonnie has just carried that thing. He's done a lot of great work there. It tries to hold true, for like people that don't know, it tries to hold true to Codeigniter's core tenets, which is something really simple, has enough tools where you can get a website fully up and running, or a web app fully up and running, without having to include a million packages. So just with the core framework, you can get something running, but it's still very small. So it's not quite a micro framework, but it's definitely not a full stack framework like Laravel or Symfony. So it kind of holds true to that core Codeigniter idea of the small framework, but updates it for modern standards. So uses Composer out of the box, uses dependency injection, the things we've grown accustomed to in modern PHP, brought to that Codeigniter idea.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Another thing that I understand about you is that you have a podcast show with Phil Sturgeon.
Yeah, I do. So it's the PHP Town Hall podcast, and it's nowhere near as professional as this one. So I don't think we've ever actually started on time once.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is fine because this is all recorded. It's not live.
Oh, okay, perfect. So it doesn't matter. So Phil Sturgeon actually recently was replaced by Amanda Folsom. So we had a pretty good run. I want to say it was like 4 years, 3 or 4 years. It was one of the longest running PHP podcasts together. But Phil's moved on from PHP. He doesn't really do any PHP anymore. He's doing Ruby now. He's a trader. So Amanda Folsom, she works at GitLab. She's pretty involved in the community. She's involved with the Fig. And she's now my co-host. So, yeah.
All right. But I still think that even in early days with PHP and then with Laravel, Phil still did a lot of work, contributed a lot of codes and whatnot. I think many people still follow his style of dry when it comes to CodeNightly stuff. Yeah,
he contributed a ton, way more than I did even back in the day. It's actually my relationship with Phil. Started with Pyro, and then we worked on Ion Auth together. So we actually met when he was in England and I was in Florida. We met online and collaborated, and now we both live in New York. And it's one example I give people of why you should get involved with the community, because you might not see how, but I'd made some of my best friends from the PHP community, and Phil's a perfect example of that. I met him 9 years ago or something like that, and now we've had a podcast together. We've worked on so many projects together, and now we even live in the same city and hang out all the time. So the community is a lot smaller than you might think it would be. It's a small world kind of thing.
Oh wait, you said you were in England?
He was in England. I was in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, now how about this? Some last notes for those who are starting out with PHP. Any advice you can give?
For those starting out in PHP, so I would say, kind of as we touched on before, don't feel like you have to learn all the perfect best practices at once. As more senior developers, we tend to take it for granted how much base knowledge there is. As you're starting out, it's okay to just learn enough to get a site up, and then learn enough to refactor it a little bit, and then take the next step and refactor it a little more. You don't have to feel guilty or feel like you have to learn everything all at once and do it perfectly the first time. It's okay to learn that. It's okay to make mistakes. We all do. And that's how you learn. You learn a lot more from a mistake, from a problem you're stuck on for 2 weeks, than you will getting everything right the first time. So that would be my main advice, is just don't be too hard on yourself as you learn and keep pushing. Another would be, do find a framework you like. I don't really care which one it is, but just sample the frameworks, read some of their basic getting started tutorials, and see which one kind of clicks the most with you, because different ones will fit the way you think through problems better. And then once you find that, really dig into it, try it out, use it for a couple projects, read their core. You'll learn a lot from the way they solve problems. Even if you move on to another framework later, having that core knowledge of, okay, so they had this problem, and this is how they solved it. That'll help you a lot going forward. And then on top of that, as soon as you feel comfortable, get involved with the community. I recommend starting with that framework you like, just get involved with their community. And a lot of the reason I recommend that is because it worked for me. It's going to work for a lot of other people. It's not that you necessarily have to do it that way, but it's easier to get involved in a group when you have a shared interest. And so a framework or a library or something that you all share an interest in helps. And don't feel self-conscious about posting questions or talking about what you're working on. For the most part, the PHP community is incredibly open and incredibly kind to people, and we will help you learn and to grow and not be judgmental for whether you're starting, because everybody starts somewhere else.
All right. I guess if I can sum that up, number one, don't be so hard on yourself when you're starting out. Number two is use a framework. And number three, be involved in the community.
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, yeah, good advice. All right. I guess I have to thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this with me. I will have this up as soon as I can, and I will let you know.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.